Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's live broadcast. It is Tuesday, the 14th of June. My name is Tim Guest, and I just really want to start out by letting everyone know that if you've got any questions that you want to ask throughout the broadcast today, you can post them in the comments below. You can also tweet hashtag AskTimGuest, and of course, as we go through the broadcast, we'll try and get as many people's questions answered as possible. Kind of want to start by revisiting last week's broadcast. Had a terrific response to the broadcast. We were discussing housing affordability and talking about a lot of the fact and the fiction that's out there. There's a lot of conversation. It's a pretty big election issue at the moment. So, there's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of people saying a lot of stuff, and we wanted to actually look at the hard stats and talk about exactly how housing affordability is looking right now in Australia. If you've got questions about housing affordability, I'm not going to talk about it right now. I don't want to waste your time if you watch the video from last week. But get onto the Infinite Wealth Facebook page. Go back and have a look, have a read or have a watch of that video, and plenty of stats there to really get all your questions answered about that. So. A couple other things that I want to cover before I really get into today's topic, and that is, if you don't already like the Facebook page, make sure you get on and like the Infinite Wealth Facebook page. You can also go up into the right-hand corner, and where the like button is, if you hover over the like button, you can make sure that you see our notifications first, so that way you don't miss any of the posts. And also you can do the same on this post. There's an upside down arrow in the top right hand corner there. If you click on that, you can get the notifications and make sure you subscribe to all of the videos and get everything you need to know when it comes to like creating wealth, living the life you want to live, financial freedom, and how you can really reach your goals financially. So, first and foremost, why is it that I do these broadcasts? Look, a lot of people had a few questions about my origins last week, just to really let people know about that. I mean, I was born and raised and grew up in the suburb of Gosnells. I certainly didn't come from money. I'm just like a lot of the hardworking Australians out there. I grew up in a single income family. My dad worked his guts out so that mum could stay at home with us kids, and my future was probably heading down certainly a very similar path. And it wasn't until I was very lucky. I had someone that taught me about this stuff, that pointed me in the right direction, and I went out there and I made sure I got as much information as I possibly could so I could use it to my benefit, and I was able to retire as a multimillionaire at the age of 27. And then for the last 5 years, what I've been doing is I've been basically teaching other people how they can do the same. In the last 5 years, I've led workshops to over 11,000 people Australia-wide, helping them reach their financial goals. And I've also been recognised by WA Today as the Entrepreneur of the Year, and by Business News as a 40 under 40, which is probably my favourite one because it tells me that I'm still under 40, so that's always good news. So that gives you a bit of background on why it is that I do what I do. But what is it that we're going to be talking about today? Look, one of the things that came up so much out of all of the questions that arose from the video last week, and from people, tweeting, and people posting their comments, and people contacting me personally. We had a lot of people asking a lot of questions, and there was a lot of conversation about negative gearing. Negative gearing, pretty contentious issue at the moment. Obviously, the Labor Party have proposed to wind back negative gearing. The Greens have also proposed some similar changes to the negative gearing policy. Liberal have said that they'll leave it unchanged, but there's just been a lot of conversation about negative gearing and the impacts of negative gearing. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions about, whether it should be or shouldn't be there, and how it's impacting housing affordability. So I wanted to talk today about, primarily, there is 4 things that I have seen that people just are not talking about when it comes to negative gearing. So there are 4 things that I want to address with you today. So the first one is this. People talk about negative gearing as being a tax break for the wealthy. I want to tell you how the abolishment of negative gearing isn't the abolishment of a tax break. It's actually the introduction of a new tax. No one's talking about this. So that's the first thing. I'm going to cover that today. And then what we're also going to talk about over the next few weeks is the other 3 points. The second point is this. is a lot of people are saying that negative gearing is what is stopping particularly first home buyers, young Australians from getting into the market. I'm going to tell you exactly how that is not the case at all. The third thing that we're going to talk about is where the Australian government should actually be focusing. I mean, one of the things we've got to deal with we have a deficit at the moment. You know, the government is not in the most sound financial position, and they certainly do need to look at, well, primarily probably spending the money better. But secondly, they do need to look at probably boosting tax revenue as well. So where the Australian government should be looking, if that's what they're actually out to do. And you know, I certainly know that Labor has been talking about that's one of the reasons why they want to abolish negative gearing, is to boost tax revenue and take it off the wealthy, the ones that are benefiting from it the most. The final thing is why the abolishment of negative gearing is actually an attack on the average Australian and their ability to get ahead financially. So they're the 4 points. Why it's not a tax break, why it's the introduction of a new tax, why it won't change the ability of first home buyers to be able to get into the market, where the Australian government should actually be looking if it wants to boost its tax revenue, and why the abolishment of negative gearing is an attack on the average hard-working Australian and their ability to get ahead financially. So, negative gearing, it gets talked about as a tax break. Okay, it gets talked about primarily as a tax break that is benefiting the wealthy. So I quoted some figures last week. I'm going to quote them again. You know, feel free to verify them. You can see in the videos that we've provided links to where you can find this data. 66.6% of Australians that negative gear earn under $80,000 a year. So this primarily, if they do abolish, if Labor gets in and they have the numbers to be able to get this law through the Senate, if they do abolish negative gearing, this is going to impact hard-working Australians more than it's going to impact the wealthy. And of course, you know, the other thing that we've got to look at as well is that, you know, if the wealthy are getting, or if the wealthy are not able to claim that as a tax break, it's probably not going to make too much of a difference to their situation. But if you've got an average Joe, an average mum and dad who really rely on negative gearing to be able to invest in property and build their wealth, it's going to basically eliminate their ability to do so. So let's talk about tax, and let's talk about it for the average Australian. Let's talk about tax for the average business owner and for the average country. So what I've got right here is a very, very simple document, okay, or a very simple graph. What I'm trying to indicate here, and firstly, let's talk about the average worker. So this is any average Joe, hardworking Australian that is going out, working their guts out 40 hours a week to earn an income. If you earn for your income per week or per year, let's talk about it on a yearly basis, and this is the overall income that you earn in a year, and you spend money on earning that income, i.e. one of the most common tax deductions that people claim is using maybe their car for work. So let's say you earn $80,000 a year, but you spend $5,000 a year on running a car for your ability to earn an income. Then the government say that you only need to pay tax on $75,000. That's what they're essentially working out at the end of the year. If you've paid too much tax, then what they're going to do is they're going to give you a tax check or a tax refund at the end of the year. Okay, so average income earner, let's say they're earning $80,000 a year, they spend $5,000 running their car so they can generate an income. That means the only tax that they have to pay for that year is that their taxable income becomes $75,000. So let's now go to the other end. Okay, let's talk about a business, or let's talk about a company. A company generates a certain revenue. Okay, let's say the revenue that they generate in a year is $80,000 a year. But they have certain expenses and they pay their rent, they pay their staff, they pay the electricity. All that money that they spend in the interest of generating an income, they can deduct that. That's the difference between revenue, expenses, and that leaves a net profit, which is what they pay tax on. So once again, you know, we might say $1 million. Say they generate $1 million worth of revenue, they spend $200,000 on running their business, their taxable income or their net profit is $800,000, and that's what they pay tax on. Now, if we look at property investors at the moment, the same thing applies. What negative gearing is, for a lot of people that don't actually understand what negative gearing is, negative gearing applies when a person who has an investment property, the income they generate from that investment property does not cover the expenses. The amount of expenses are not covered, they can deduct from their overall income. So once again, say you earn $80,000 a year, but there is expenses of $5,000 a year which are not covered by the rent, then you can reduce that off your taxable income and you only pay tax on the remaining amount. So what you can see here is that this principle applies to every other person out there, whether they're the average worker that just earns a wage, whether they're a business owner, sole proprietor, or even a company. This same principle applies. Yet what Labor are proposing is they want to abolish this. So what happens is a property investor will pay tax on the full amount. So they talk about eliminating it as a tax break. You can see it's not eliminating a tax break. It is actually adding in a brand new tax, the addition of a tax on property investors. Okay, so this is going to make it, and talking about it with the housing affordability issues that we discussed last week, one of the things that I think we're going to see is that if you remove the benefits of investing in property, you're going to see a lot less people investing in property. Ultimately, what that's going to do is impact the supply. And, if you want to increase housing affordability, the one thing that you need to do to the housing market is increase supply. Now, if investors aren't going to do it, what? Is the government going to do it? I mean, can you think about the kind of cost that the government's going to have to bear if they have to provide the housing rather than investors? So that's the number one reason. This is the one thing that people just simply aren't talking about, that the abolishment of negative gearing is actually going to be the addition of a tax to the system. Okay, so the other three things that I said that I was going to talk about is first and foremost how people think that investors and negative gearing, and once again, they think that the majority of people that are taking advantage of negative gearing are the wealthy. It's not. 2/3 of people that are taking advantage of negative gearing are people earning under $80,000. The average hardworking Australian, they're the people that are going to be hit hardest. It is not investors which are making it harder for first home buyers. We're going to talk about that next week, exactly why that is the case. Then what we're going to talk about in the subsequent weeks as well is why or where the Australian government actually should have its focus if it wants to boost tax revenue, if it wants to get us out of this particular deficit situation that we're currently in the economy. And then the fourth thing that we're going to discuss over the coming weeks is how the abolishment of negative gearing is actually a complete attack on the average hardworking Australian and their ability to get ahead. Some stats which, once again, I'm very big on my stats. I'm very big on being able to reference them and show evidence. So if anyone has any doubts or questions or, want to know exactly where I get my information, let me know. I'm more than happy to post the links. But some stats that came up just in the last 18 months in a Suncorp survey is that currently right now, almost half of baby boomers expect to have to work into their 70s, and almost a quarter of baby boomers expect to have to work into their 80s. So if people are planning on actually being able to retire at some point rather than having to work until the day that they die, then there's got to be some ability for the average Australian to actually get ahead financially. So look, that pretty much wraps up my my video for today. Couple of things, I know a lot of people have been asking about how they can actually come to one of our events. There's a link that I've put in the title of this video. Click on the link; it'll tell you about our upcoming events and how you can actually come and see me. And I'll share a lot of the information that I've learned over the past 20 years that's enabled me to get into my situation and can help you too. Once again, got to make sure that you like the Facebook page, the Infinite Wealth Facebook page, so you can stay up to date with all our updates. If you go up onto and hover over the like button, there'll be an opportunity to switch on the notifications so you see the posts first. And if you want to stay a subscriber to the videos, you can click on the upside down arrow that's in the top right hand corner of this particular video, and it'll let you know every time we have a live broadcast. If you want to tweet, you can tweet at TimGuest_AU, or you can hashtag AskTimGuest. More than happy to share my information and contribute to everyday hardworking Australians out there that are trying to live the life they really want and navigate the misinformation that's particularly spread by mainstream media. And of course, there's plenty of other people out there with vested interests that are trying to convince you as well. So, guys, thanks for tuning in today. It was great being with you again. Next week, we're probably going to be looking at doing this broadcast on Monday night. So put it in your diaries. We're going to be doing it around about 5 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time, around about 7 o'clock Australian Eastern Time, and then tune in, and we're going to talk about how negative gearing is not impacting or how it's not going to change first homeowners' ability to get into the market, and what is the one thing that the government should be talking about that will change for first home buyers. Thanks for being with me here today, and we look forward to talking to you or seeing you very soon. Thanks a lot, guys. You have a great day.